3 centuries passed, a legendary fellowship of 5 heroes embarked on a quest to deliver the world from darkness. Yet for one of them, death was not the end, but merely a new chapter in his tale. In fact, it was the dawn of an incredibly long and agonizing existence beyond the grave. In those days, the very world was engulfed in flames. Monstrous dragons cast a perpetual eclipse across the sky, their immense shadows blanketing a land scarred by endless war. Far below, the Demon King's citadel loomed. It stood like a festering wound upon the earth, the last grim bastion of evil in a world breathing its last. Within its oppressive walls lay a cemetery of shattered stone and broken ambitions. A profound, heavy silence hung in the air, a terrifying lull in the cacophony of battle that raged just beyond the gates. This was the very stage where the fabled hero Vermouth and his 4 companions would make their ultimate stand, having ventured deep into the heart of enemy territory to extinguish the Demon Kings for good. They had already clawed their way through hell itself, vanquishing of the 5 demon monarchs. With only 2 remaining, victory was tantalizingly within reach. Without a single word exchanged, they surged forward. They became a whirlwind of color and flashing steel, diving headlong into a corridor teeming with demonic spawn, their crimson eyes glowing like malevolent embers in the oppressive gloom. The foe was a relentless, nightmarish tide of colossal armored brutes and winged abominations, all standing as a barrier between the heroes and their final objective. But at the vanguard of this desperate charge was the hero, Vermouth. His golden gaze was unwavering, his concentration absolute. A radiant blue aura ignited around his arm as he gathered his power for a pack's single, decisive strike. In one seamless, fluid motion, his blade became a streak of pure light, carving a pristine path through the demonic throng. It was a display of power, so elegant it appeared utterly effortless. He pivoted, and a colossal wave of pure energy erupted from his blade, annihilating everything in its path in a blinding cataclysm of white light. When the searing light finally faded, a vast and empty path had been carved straight through the enemy ranks. The demons were simply gone, vaporized where they stood. This was the power of the man they called the Great Vermouth, a hero whose immense strength was matched only by his profound and unshakable calm. Following directly in his wake, the party's archmage stepped forward, her staff held ready as she surveyed the remaining demons. A look of intense concentration settled on her face as she began to summon her own incredible power. A wicked and utterly confident grin spread across her lips. She knew that against an army this vast, her magic was more than sufficient to turn the tide. The crystal atop her staff ignited with a blinding golden radiance, practically humming with the sheer volume of energy she poured into the casting. She then unleashed a chaotic storm of fire and ice, a torrent of elemental fury that crashed into the demonic army and tore it to pieces. They called her the Wise Sienna, and with a smirk like that, it was plain to see she relished showing off just how wise and devastatingly powerful she truly was. As the dust from Sienna's cataclysmic spell began to settle, another companion moved forward, her long blonde hair flowing like a silken banner behind her. She closed her eyes, clasping her hands in prayer as a warm and divine light enveloped her. She called out a blessing, fortifying her comrades for the fight that was yet to come. But in that precise moment of concentration, a demon saw its chance, lunging at the seemingly defenseless healer with a blood-curdling screech. Without so much as opening her eyes, she swung her holy mace in a brutal, sweeping arc, crushing the demon's skull with a sickening crunch before flawlessly returning to her prayer. This is the Faithful Anise, a perfect example of how the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true nature. Her gentle appearance concealed a will of pure steel and the overwhelming strength to back it up. Suddenly, a massive armored boot slammed down, the demon's skull against the cold stone floor. A colossal warrior unleashes a thunderous battle cry, brandishing a 2-handed axe so massive it could cleave a mountain. He transforms into a maelstrom of raw devastation, his great axe scything through the air and launching demons away like mere playthings. He pauses, standing defiantly in the heart of the carnage he created, with blood misting the very air he breathes. This is the valiant, and from the sheer breadth of his grin, it's clear he's reveling in every moment of this fight of his life. Then we have the final member, a fiery-haired swordsman named Hamill. He wasn't at the vanguard leading the assault, nor was he weaving any magnificent spells. No, he was simply charging forward, propelled by nothing but sheer, unyielding pride, screaming at the top of his lungs, "Don't you even think about getting ahead of me." In his mind, this wasn't a battlefield, it was a racetrack. He surged onward with reckless abandon, his sole objective being to overtake his rival and demonstrate he was every bit as powerful, if not more so. With a snarl of absolute fury, he bellowed for the demons to get out of his accursed path. His blade became a whirlwind of savage, relentless attacks. While Vermouth fought with elegance and precision, Hamill was a storm of raw power and untamed ferocity. And this is our protagonist, the man whose true journey to where he becomes strongest Manhwa hides behind the tales of his remember, for some inexplicable reason, as the Foolish Hamill. He carves through the final demon, blocking his path, letting out a breath of satisfaction. At last, he had closed the distance. The reality was, Hamill harbored a bitter jealousy towards Vermouth. He had unilaterally declared the hero his rival, engaging in a one-sided contest that the rest of his companions chose to largely disregard. Hamill's eyes dart around the chamber. Observing that the last of the lesser demons had been dispatched, he assumes the path to the main boss is now clear, but then his eyes widen in sheer, unadulterated terror. He perceives a threat no one else has noticed, and a single name is torn from his throat in a desperate scream. Vermouth, a blur of motion, faster than any of them could possibly track, erupts. Vermouth is paralyzed, caught completely unaware by the new menace that materialized before him. In that infinitesimally small moment, as a demon king's taloned hand lunges forward to assassinate the hero, Hamill moves on pure, unthinking instinct. He hurls his own body into the path of the attack. The claws rip directly through his torso. The shock is instantaneous, the agony all-consuming. Crimson spills from his lips as Vermouth can only watch, struck completely silent by the sudden, savage sacrifice. The Demon King towers above them, its grotesque arms still embedded deep within Hamill's body. The injury is mortal, there is no recovery from this. As Hamill's body begins to crumple, the Demon King wrenches its arm free, observing its victim's collapse with a cold, monstrous apathy. It lets out a triumphant shriek and lunges once more, unleashing a torrent of dark energy intended to annihilate the party for good. But this time, Vermouth is prepared. The tranquility in his gaze has vanished, supplanted by an expression of pure, chilling rage. He confronts the blast directly, parrying it with a thunderous collision that pulverizes the very stone beneath their feet. Unleashing a roar of his own, Vermouth charges, his sword now blazing with an intensity that utterly eclipses the demon's malevolent power. In a single, final, cataclysmic strike, powered by grief and he unleashes the entirety of his strength, completely annihilating the Demon King. The other companions, at last breaking free from their stunned paralysis, cry out Hamill's name as they scramble to his side, their expressions twisted in horror and disbelief. They huddle around his failing form. Vermouth stands over him, shoulders slumped, the immense weight of his friend's sacrifice crushing him. He gazes down at his rival, his friend, thinking to himself that this was never how their story was meant to conclude. Hamill's death was never a necessity, but through the agony and the crimson haze, he managed to crack a faint, pained smile, telling Vermouth that this was more than enough. For a warrior, there could be no greater honor in death. Still, as his life faded, a profound regret took root in his soul. He had never bared his true heart to those he fought alongside, the comrades he had secretly come to see as his own family. Summoning his final ounce of strength, he extended a blood-soaked hand, imploring his rival to press forward. "You must defeat the Demon Kings." Vermouth gripped his hand, a silent, weighty vow exchanged in that final, desperate touch. Gazing down at his fallen companion, Vermouth swore a solemn oath, his voice thick with unbridled grief. He vowed to eradicate every last one of the Demon Kings. Upon hearing that promise, a serene, faint smile graced Hamill's lips. His rival would surely see it through. He could finally find peace. His dimming eyes shifted to Anise, his voice a mere breath as he asked her to pray for his soul. He then turned to the giant warrior, affirming he was the most courageous man he had ever known. At last, his gaze fell upon Sienna, who was crying in silence, her stoic demeanor utterly broken. Hamill fought for breath, trying to utter the final words he'd always longed to say, the ones his courage had always failed him on. "To be honest, I never liked—" A young boy with a shock of white hair slammed a book closed, roaring in absolute frustration. "I never said that." He was trembling. Pure rage, his small fists clenched into tight knots. How many times must he endure this fabrication? He seethed, wondering what kind of ridiculous children's story. If he ever discovered their identity, he would hunt them to the ends of the earth. He fumed, recalling how they all received such glorious titles. The great, the wise, the faithful, the brave. And him, he was forever branded as Hamill the Foolish. It was the absolute highest form of disrespect. He hurled the book away in disgust. He simply couldn't fathom how his old comrades could allow a story like this to be published. Did his honor mean nothing to them? He paused then, a bitter realization dawning on him, as the memory of his own death resurfaced. Of course, it's not as if they could have ever foreseen that the long dead and buried would be reincarnated. The tale of how a hero becomes strongest Manhwa hides his very soul in a new life, and now he had to endure this. He heaved a deep sigh. The bizarre reality of his situation washed over him once more. He, Hamill, had perished in battle 300 years ago, yet, as he touched his own face, his neck, he knew it was not his own. This era was not his own. He lifted his gaze to a grand, luminous portrait adorning the wall, a painting of the man himself, the legendary hero, Vermouth Lionheart, and in the most staggering twist of fate conceivable, he, Hamill, had reborn as a direct descendant of his greatest rival. His new name was Eugene Lionheart, and he was now 13 years of age. Eugene prepared for his training, his mind wandered back to his old rival, Vermouth. He had recently discovered that in his later years, the great hero had apparently taken on numerous concubines. While wrapping his hands, he mused that Vermouth was never the sort to pursue women. He wondered if the passage of time had changed the man, but quickly dismissed it. Even a hero is only human. Within the Lionheart clan, lineage is paramount. The only true heirs are those descended from Vermouth's one and only legal wife. All others, born from different partners, are relegated to the collateral families, a subordinate status despite sharing the same revered name. This status is shackled with rigid regulations. Children from these branch families are strictly forbidden from training with actual swords or even learning to wield their mana until they undergo a specific, mandatory ritual. Consequently, For years, Eugene has been stuck with nothing but wielding a flimsy wooden sword. Yet, as he gazes at the cheap piece of timber in his grasp, he knows this will be the final time he ever has to rely on such a pathetic tool. He bursts into action, his eyes flaring with a fierce, focused light. He moves with a velocity and force that no ordinary 13-year-old could ever hope to achieve, pouring every fragment of his soul into each swing. The wooden blade transforms into a blur, slicing through the air with such immense power that it leaves a vibrant streak in its path. With a single, final, devastating blow against a training dummy, the sword can no longer withstand the strain. It explodes into a dozen pieces from the sheer, overwhelming impact. All that remains is a splintered hilt clutched in his hand. The ground beneath the dummy is fractured, a stark testament to the incredible force he just unleashed. A man observing from nearby can only gape, his face a perfect mask of pure astonishment. A single bead of sweat trickles down his temple as he struggles to comprehend what he just witnessed. He lets out a weary sigh. You've broken it again. Eugene pivots to face him, his expression completely unreadable. He responds calmly, Father. The man, his own father, guard, clenches his fist, his mind a whirlwind of familiar awe and creeping anxiety. He studies his son's powerful physique and can't help but wonder, how is that possibly the body of a 13-year-old? A genuine sense of dread washes over him at the terrifying thought that if they were to ever clash, he would undoubtedly lose. A chill runs straight down his spine. Eugene is his son, yet sometimes, he is truly afraid of him. The boy doesn't behave like a child, and those piercing golden eyes possess a terrifying, ancient intensity. He recalls how when Eugene's mother passed on, the boy never shed a tear, never displayed even a fleeting moment of sorrow. It's just one more unsettling piece in the complex puzzle that is his son. Eugene casually kicks a fragment of the shattered sword aside, his annoyance palpable. He declares bluntly that the local blacksmith's craftsmanship is absolute garbage. He holds up the splintered hilt, his eyes simmering with irritation. He grumbles that the man deserves a harsh lesson for selling such junk, but his father is simply too soft-hearted. Guard clears his throat awkwardly, uncertain how to manage his son's fierce personality. He just mutters that he will give the blacksmith a stern warning. Shifting the topic, he reminds Eugene that the following day is the bloodline succession ceremony. The sun casts a brilliant light upon their home, marking the eve of a day that will change everything. Eugene's eyes narrow with contempt. The bloodline succession ceremony. Just another one of the Lionheart clan's ridiculous traditions held every 10 years. It's an occasion where all the clan's children, aged between 10 and 15, from both the main and collateral families, are summoned to the main family's estate for a grand ceremony. There, they are forced to compete against one another to prove who is most worthy of bearing the prestigious Lionheart name. But Eugene knows the entire game is rigged from the start. The children from the direct lineage have been training with superior weapons and mana their entire lives. He grits his teeth, understanding it's merely a system designed to keep the branch families subjugated. In a world like this, the one who becomes strongest, Manhwa, hides his true power, waiting for the right moment to strike. Guard gazes at his son, his heart aching with a sorrowful thought. Eugene is so gifted, it's almost impossible to believe he's his own flesh and blood. If only he'd been born into the main family, he laments. Or perhaps, it would have been better if Eugene possessed no talent at all. If he were just an ordinary boy like him, then he wouldn't have to endure the agonizing chasm between his immense potential and his current reality. Eugene notices his father's pained expression. Why are you looking at me with that expression? Guard simply pinches the bridge of his nose and dismisses it, saying it's nothing at all. He scoffs inwardly. Nothing? Please. He knows exactly what his father is thinking. He's just blaming himself again for not being able to give his son a better start. Guard's heavy hand comes to rest on Eugene's shoulder, his gaze intense and direct. He delivers a stern warning to his son. Do not even consider competing with the children from the main family. He hammers the point home, insisting that no matter how gifted Eugene might be, he is simply not their equal. Eugene just offers a bright smile and says, Okay, I promise. Of course, he's thinking to himself, asterisk, as if I'd listen, asterisk. A wicked smirk plays on his lips. A skills competition against a pack of children. The entire concept is just so mind-numbingly tedious. He glances toward the training dummy, his mind already leaping ahead to the coming challenge. His father had laid out the competition for him, 3 children from the main family and 6 from the various branch families. Of the 3 from the main bloodline, 1 is the designated heir, and the other 2 are twins. As for the rest of them, Eugene assumes they're hardly worth mentioning. The real story of how one ** becomes strongest Manhwa hides ** behind an unassuming facade, and he is the master of that disguise. He lifts the broken hilt, his grip tightening with raw anticipation. As he moves through his training forms, a new fire ignites deep within him. A new purpose. A vicious, predatory grin spreads across his face, a dangerous glint in his eyes. Let's see just how impressive the descendants of the Great Vermouth really are. The next day, a carriage rumbles down a long road, making its way toward a grand and distant estate. Inside, Eugene sits in silence, completely lost in his thoughts. Back in his past life as Hamill, he had always believed himself to be a genius. He remembers his youth vividly. He learned faster than anyone, grew stronger than his peers, and never truly struggled or had to exert himself. But a particular memory surfaces, sharp and acrid, a younger, angrier Hamill, shouting furiously at Vermouth. What did you just say to me? You? Vermouth's calm reply echoes in his memory. I said, it is a shame. You could be so much stronger if you just tried a little more. The memory makes his face flush with that same old anger. He'd screamed back then, "Can't you see I'm giving it everything I have? I'm trying as hard as I can." He had pointed an accusing finger, shouting, "Don't think that just because you're some kind of genius, everyone else can be like you." But now, 300 years later, Eugene finally understands the truth. He was never the genius in their group. The true genius had always been Vermouth the Great, a prodigy who had completely mastered both the sword and the arcane arts. He was so powerful, they called him the god of war. After the war, Vermouth lived as a duke, lauded as a legendary hero right up until the day of his death. Eugene leans back in the carriage seat, his thoughts turning to the others. He recalls Sienna the Wise. That sharp-tongued little witch became a magic tower master, the youngest in all of history. And Anise the Faithful, a woman he personally thought was rotten to the core. Yet she became a revered saint, so famous that they wrote holy scriptures about her. Even Molon the Brave, that lovable simpleton, actually went on to establish an entire kingdom in his name. It seems as though every single one of his old comrades lived long, fulfilling lives. The thought causes his hand to clench, knuckles turning white as he grips the fabric of the carriage seat. He grinds his teeth, a single, burning question consuming his mind. Then why is the Demon King still alive? He vividly remembers the vow Vermouth made at his deathbed. He promised he would kill every last one of them. He stares out the window, the pieces of the puzzle beginning to fall into place. He died in the castle of the Demon King of Incarceration. And the history books all mention a promise Vermouth made with that very same Demon King right after he had fallen. The historical records all mention a pact Vermouth made with that very same Demon King immediately following his own death. That enigmatic vow was the very thing that concluded the Great War, ushering in a fragile peace that has miraculously endured for 300 years. With every jolt of the carriage, Eugene's determination crystallizes. He must uncover the truth. What was the nature of that promise? And why would Vermouth betray his solemn oath to a fallen comrade? His brooding is shattered by a cheerful voice from across the carriage. "You must be quite nervous." The man, a certain Lord Gordon from a collateral line, chimes in, practically vibrating with his own eagerness. He leans in, a self-satisfied smirk plastered on his face, offering the unsolicited advice that if Eugene is this anxious now, the main estate will surely overwhelm him. Eugene crafts a flawless mask of sweet innocence. "I appreciate the counsel, Lord Gordon," he replies, his tone perfectly polite, yet his eyes hold a chilling frost as the carriage rumbles through a magnificent gate. Gordon puffs out his chest, announcing with unearned pride, "From this moment forward, we are officially on Lionheart land." He then adds, "Don't bother preparing yourself just yet. The journey to the mansion is still a considerable one." Eugene's internal voice scoffs, "It's not even your territory. What gives you the right to be so proud?" Gordon then poses a rhetorical question about the inconvenience of such a vast property, only to immediately boast about the several warp gates that make traversing it effortless. For a fleeting moment, Eugene's polite facade cracks. "Is that so? Then why are we still in this carriage?" Gordon's smugness returns in full force as he explains that, naturally, they haven't been granted clearance to utilize the warp gates. Eugene simply closes his eyes, a faint smile concealing his rising irritation as the horses pull them deeper into the sprawling domain. The domain of a family he was born into by blood, but one he could never truly belong to. At long last, they arrive. The main house is nothing short of a palace, a veritable fortress befitting the lineage of a hero who saved the world. Lord Gordon disembarks with a flourish, gesturing grandly as he welcomes Eugene to the ancestral home of the Lionheart Patriarch. Eugene exits the carriage, his gaze fixed on the colossal structure, his expression a carefully guarded secret. His golden eyes, however, betray a cold, unyielding resolve. A fierce wind howls around the estate's grand gates, tugging at the banners that defiantly display the family crest. As Eugene proceeds up the main path, he notes the quiet diligence of the servants already at work, their presence a silent testament to the sheer scale and opulence of this domain. He scans the deserted courtyard, a dry, cynical thought forming in his mind. A welcoming committee? He scoffs internally. Not a chance. He is acutely aware of his standing here. It's not one that merits any sort of special reception. They draw near the main edifice, a building that more closely resembles a castle than a private residence. The entire estate is a breathtaking exhibition of power and history, all founded upon the legend of one man, Vermouth Lionheart. His symbol, the golden lion, is etched into every surface, a constant reminder of the bloodline he now shares. A world where the one who *** becomes strongest Manhwa hides *** their true power. But he knows that connection is superficial at best. Eugene's gaze drops to his own chest. For only the direct descendants, the true heirs to the legacy, are permitted to openly bear the lion's crest. It's yet another small, sharp sting, a reminder of his status as an outsider. He turns to Lord Gordon, asking if any other relatives have made their appearance. Gordon, playing the part of the smug informant, declares that Eugene is the very first to arrive, before offering to escort him to the guest quarters. These guest quarters are, in fact, a lavish mansion in their own right, encircled by flawlessly manicured gardens that would put the grandest estates of other nobles to shame. Offers him a small bell, instructing him to ring it should he require her assistance, but while her demeanor is pleasant, Eugene's mind is already racing, connecting the dots behind this gesture. He muses internally that assigning him a personal maid is, at the very least, a minor courtesy. A courtesy, however, that likely comes with strings attached. Settling onto the bed, he inquires about her age, remarking on her youthful appearance. Nena confirms she is merely 16, a completely inexperienced servant. He instantly deciphers their ploy. If this novice girl messes up, they can pin the entire blame on him. It's a transparent scheme to establish dominance from the very start. Crossing his arm, he coolly inquires when the rest of the family members are scheduled to arrive. Nena informs him they should all be present within the next 4 days. Only 4 days? That is more than enough time. He rises to his feet abruptly and issues his first command: "Take me to the training grounds." Nena is completely blindsided by the sudden request, stammering for a moment before scrambling to obey. As they walk through the garden, 2 figures observe them from a balcony high above. One of them, a boy with impeccably styled white hair, points down at Eugene, asking his companion what their new guest's name was. The girl beside him replies that his name is Eugene and that he is the exact same age as them. The boy, Cyan, scoffs at this. He'd heard Eugene is from some forgotten town on the very edge. He smirks, declaring, the boy is probably more accustomed to holding a rake than a sword. He pinches his nose in disgust, adding that the carriage he arrived in must be utterly filthy. He ponders that even if Eugene is a relative, he must be held responsible for tarnishing the main house's property. The girl, Seal, claps her hands in sheer delight. Yes, you're absolutely right. Let's go give him a proper talking to. Cyan holds up a finger, correcting her with a smug smile. We aren't scolding him, we are giving him a warning. Let's go, Seal, he announces. She just giggles, telling him he's far too kind. From another window, someone else watches as the 2 arrogant twins begin their descent toward the gardens. Seal practically skips as she follows her brother, radiating an aura of pure mischief. Her golden eyes are gleaming with anticipation for the trouble they are about to cause. The person watching from the window seems shocked, clearly not expecting to see members of the main family out and about. Down below, Seal glances up toward the window, as if she knew someone was watching them the entire time. She gives a little wave, a small puff of air escaping her lips in a silent laugh. She is obviously relishing every single second of this. Meanwhile, in the training yard, Eugene has not wasted a moment. With his maid, Nena, watching, he's already started practicing with a weighted training spear. His posture is impeccable, his eyes intensely focused. Even with a basic spear, he carries himself like a seasoned warrior. He moves with blinding speed, the heavy spear a blur as he thrusts, parries, and spins. This is how a hero who *** becomes strongest Manhwa hides *** his true power in plain sight. He stops on a dime, his grip like iron, his stance as solid as bedrock. This is not mere practice, this is disciplined, lethal training. He thinks to himself that while he was never lazy in his past life, he has to push this new body to its absolute limits, to whip it back into fighting shape. He flows through his movements, each one potent and precise. He notes that no matter how hard he pushes this body, he has never gotten sick, and his injuries heal with a blistering pace. His grip on the spear was a vice, funneling every ounce of his might into the ancient shaft. He spun the weapon around himself, generating a whirlwind of force, the spear letting out a resounding crack as he adjusted his hold for the next assault. A predatory grin stretched across his face as he felt the raw energy surging within him. The potential of this body, this vessel blessed with the blood of the Great Vermouth, was something that far surpassed his wildest expectations. Nina observed from afar, utterly captivated. The boy moved like a phantom, as if he were 3 warriors in one, his form flowing from lethal offense to an impenetrable defense in less than a heartbeat. She gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. It was like a tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true power, and she couldn't believe he was moving like that while burdened by weighted sandbags fastened to his arms and spear. Suddenly, a sharp, "Hey!" shattered her reverie. Panic flared in her eyes. She spun around to find Cyan and Keel standing there. Cyan jabbed an accusatory finger in Eugene's direction, demanding to know just what he was doing. Nena panicked, bowing low and stammering, "Lord Cyan, Madam Keel, what is the occasion for your visit?" Cyan paid her no mind, his furious gaze locked onto Eugene. "I am speaking to you," he repeated, his voice practically dripping with unadulterated arrogance. "What in the world do you think you are doing?" Eugene ceased his slamming the butt of his spear into the ground with a solid thud that splintered the earth beneath it. He faced Cyan with an utterly impassive expression. "Isn't it obvious? I'm training with my spear." He then turned away, muttering just loud enough for them to overhear, "You absolute moron." Seal's eyes danced with wicked delight. She leaned toward her brother and whispered, "Brother, that backwater commoner just called you a moron. That's all the reason you need." Cyan's face twisted into a mask of pure, unbridled fury. His eyes bulged as he ground his teeth together. How dare he? His fists clenched as he shrieked. "Apologize to me." Eugene simply turned back, an expression of utter boredom on his face. "I'm sorry," he droned, with not a single shred of sincerity in his tone. Cyan was momentarily struck dumb, floored by the sheer, casual dismissal. He recovered, his rage burning even hotter than before. That was not a real apology. "Now, get on your knees and bow properly." Eugene just tilted his head. "Aren't we the same age?" He spread his hands in a gesture of innocence. "Why on earth would I need to kneel for a peer?" Cyan was practically suffocating on his own anger. "How dare you call me your peer?" he sputtered, launching into a tirade about how sharing the Lionheart name did not, by any stretch of the imagination, make them equals. Seal, ever the cunning instigator, leaned in and whispered urgently, "Brother, the carriage. Don't forget about the carriage." Cyan's eyes lit up. "Oh right." He pointed a trembling finger at Eugene and bellowed, Hey, you, go and scrub the carriage you rode in on. It must reek of the livestock you probably keep as pets. Eugene didn't so much as blink. He just stood there, spear in hand, his expression a perfect, unreadable mask. Then, without even deigning to look at them, he calmly called out, "Nana, you are assigned to me, are you not?" From behind a nearby, Nana nervously replied, "Yes, Lord Eugene." Eugene gestured toward the estate's entrance. "Then you are to go and clean the carriage that I arrived in." Cyan and Seal were utterly dumbfounded. Nina stammered, "Oh, but," completely unsure of which master she was. Eugene's expression instantly hardened into a mask of cold fury. His eyes seemed to glow with a menacing light as he fixed his glare upon Cyan. "You dare give orders to my attendant? Are you implying my authority means nothing here, Cyan?" On the receiving end of this lecture, puffs out his chest, utterly flustered and furious. "Are you disrespecting my authority? I am Eugene Lionheart." In an instant, Eugene's expression flips back to a bright, cheerful smile. He offers a casual little wave. "Yeah, I'm Eugene Lionheart. It's a pleasure to meet you." Seeing her brother absolutely fuming, Seal decides to join the fun, waving happily herself. "And I'm Seal Lionheart." But Cyan is far beyond the point of pleasantries, his face darkening with rage. He glares daggers at Eugene, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous growl. "There's no point in being civil with you. You ignored my authority." His gaze lands on a wooden training sword resting on a nearby rack. He snatches it up, his hand gripping the hilt so tightly that the very ground beneath his feet begins to crack from the sheer pressure. A fiery red aura erupts around him. He is completely consumed by a storm of rage and humiliation. "And you have dishonored me. I requested." Eugene simply holds his spear, a small, patronizing smile playing on his lips. "Oh my," he says, his tone utterly unimpressed. He rests the heavy spear on his shoulder, shaking his head as if he were addressing a petulant child. "My friend," he begins, "you really shouldn't throw a word like duel around so carelessly." He leans on his spear with a weary sigh. "Can you please just leave me?" But this casual dismissal only fans the flames of Cyan's fury. "Are you scared?" Cyan sneers. That single word, scared, makes something inside Eugene snap. His bored expression vanishes, replaced by a dark, intense glare. The shadow falling across his face is a clear signal that his patience has finally run out. However, Cyan mistakes this for fear and presses his advantage. A triumphant grin spreads across his face. "You're afraid to duel me, aren't you? If so, then bow your head and apologize." Eugene scoffs, dropping the nonchalant act entirely. "I'm not scared at all," he states plainly, "and I have no reason to duel you. Nor do I have any intention of apologizing." Cyan is practically vibrating with uncontained fury. "You don't want to do this. You don't want to do that. Are you just going to run away?" He points an accusing finger, his voice dripping with scorn. "I suppose your parents never taught you a single thing about honor. That is the final straw." The sandbag waits. Eugene's arms drop to the ground with a heavy thud, kicking up a small cloud of dust. Cyan flinches back, startled. "What is it?" he stammers. Eugene's voice is as cold as ice as he begins to unwrap the bindings on his arm. "You said you wanted a duel. You're on," he declares, tossing the weighted wraps from his other arm aside. He stands there now unburdened, a classic case where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true efforts, the weights lying like trophies in the dirt. He even shrugs off the heavy chainmail vest he was wearing, which lands with another solid, ground-shaking thud. The twins and Nana can only watch, completely stunned, as the ground itself cracks from the impact of his discarded training gear. Cyan's eyes are wide with utter disbelief. Has he been training with something that heavy this entire time? He had foolishly assumed it was all for show. Eugene picks up his spear, which now feels impossibly light in his hands, his eyes locked squarely on Cyan. But Cyan can't back down now. His pride is on the line. He knows that if he retreats, his sister Seal will never let him hear the end of it. He steels himself, his face becoming a mask of grim determination. He has to put this country boy, Eugene, in his place to restore his honor. With a flourish, he rips a handkerchief from his pocket and throws it to the ground, officially issuing the challenge. "Lionheart, I, Cyan Lionheart, hereby challenge you to a formal duel," he declared, as the handkerchief fluttered to the ground between them. Eugene's body coiled like a predator, his grip tightening on the shaft of his spear. His gaze was glacial, as cold and unyielding as steel, as he prepared to spring. A single, sharp word cut through the air. "Accepted." Seal gasped, her eyes widening in disbelief. She never imagined he would actually agree to it. The moment the word left his lips, Eugene erupted into motion. He became a blur, closing the gap in a heartbeat and ramming the butt of his spear forward. The weapon slammed directly into Cyan's gut. A choked, strangled sound escaped Cyan's lips as the impact violently expelled every last bit of air from his lungs. The sheer force of the blow lifted him completely off his feet, Eugene's face an unreadable mask of cold intensity. Cyan was launched backwards through the air, his wooden sword clattering uselessly against the dirt as he collapsed in a pathetic heap. The duel was finished before it had even properly started. Looming over the fallen boy, spear in hand, Eugene calmly declared, "I win." Seal immediately rushed to her brother's side, crying his name out in a panic. Cyan's face had turned a sickly shade of green, his cheeks puffing out as he desperately tried to suppress a rising wave of nausea. But he hold it back. He retched right there on the training grounds, his body convulsing from the sheer power of the strike while Seal covered her mouth, horrified. Her gaze snapped up to Eugene, her expression twisting from shock into pure, unadulterated rage. "How cowardly!" she shrieked. An accusing finger shot out towards him. "That was not an honorable duel." In response, Eugene simply crossed his arms, utterly unfazed by her outburst. "What part of that was cowardly?" he retorted. "A duel commences the very instant the challenge is accepted. It's his own fault for dropping his guard." Ciel gritted her teeth in frustration. He was right, but as she narrowed her eyes, a sharp suspicion began to form. "You used your mana, didn't you?" "I did not," Eugene replied flatly, turning his back on them dismissively. "Those from the branch families are forbidden from even training with mana until after the bloodline continuation ceremony." Ciel screamed back, "Liar! There's absolutely no way you could move that fast." Without it, she replayed the attack in her mind. It was so fast, like something from a tale where the hero who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true abilities. Even if her brother hadn't been caught completely off guard, he never would have stood a chance of reacting in time. A faint, smug smile tugged at the corner of Eugene's lips as he turned back to face her. His expression was a perfect blend of mockery and feigned surprise. "Well, I suppose your eyes aren't just for decoration after all." Ciel furiously snapped that he had a foul mouth, but Eugene just grinned wider. "Heard that one before," he said, before continuing his explanation. "It's not as if your brother was completely helpless, you know?" He pointed out that in the split second the attack connected, Cyan instinctively tried to shift his weight to mitigate the damage. For a pampered child with no real combat experience, that reflex was actually impressive. His expression then sobered. He admitted that Cyan possessed potential, but right now, he was nowhere near strong enough to be worthy of the title descendant of the Great Vermouth. Hearing these words, Cyan struggled back to his feet, trembling with a mixture of pure rage and utter shame. "You dare say that to me?" He glared at Eugene, vomit still staining his chin. He spat out the word, "You, coward." Eugene just grinned, placing his hands on his hips. "I guess you two really are twins, since you just said the exact same thing." He began to walk toward the defeated boy, a palpable aura of confidence radiating with every single step he took. He leaned down, his voice becoming sharp and lecturing. "If you are truly an honorable descendant of the Lionheart family, then you need to honorably admit defeat when you lose a duel." Cyan could only let out a pained groan, the humiliation completely crushing his spirit. For a fleeting moment, Eugene wondered if he had perhaps gone too far. He had, after all, just thoroughly thrashed a kid from the main family. Would there be repercussions to face for this? Suddenly, a stern voice cuts through the air, calling out, "Young master." A sharply dressed man with a tidy mustache is seen rushing towards them, his face a mask of grave concern as he surveys the chaotic scene. Eugene instantly sizes him up in a flash. The lack of a lion crest meant he was a hired knight, yet his posture and aura screamed high-level skill. Cyan spots his instructor and his composure immediately shatters, stammering the man's name, Hezer. He buries his face into Hezer's pristine, sobbing uncontrollably like a small child. "I lost to a country bumpkin like him," he wails, confessing through his tears that he was the one who initiated the duel and was soundly defeated. Hezer's eyes narrow dangerously. "A duel," he repeats, the words hanging heavy in the air as he looks from his whimpering student to the unnervingly calm and collected boy standing opposite him. Hezer helps Cyan to his feet before formally introducing himself. "My name is Hezer, and I am responsible for young Master Cyan's training." Eugene's reply is equally formal. "I am Eugene Lionheart, from Giddle." The name Giddle clicks for Hezer. That would be Gart's branch of the family. "Indeed, he is my father," Eugene confirms without flinching, standing amid the wreckage of his intense training session. Hezar's gaze sweeps across the scene, the shattered training weights, the fractured ground, his utterly defeated student, and he finally asks, "What precisely transpired here?" Eugene lays it out with stark simplicity. "Cyan picked a fight with me, and then he insulted my father." Cyan, still leaning weakly against Hezer for support, musters a weak protest. "I did not," but Eugene continues, unbothered. "He claimed my father never taught me about honor and even called me a coward." Eugene locks eyes with Hezer, his own gaze sharp and unyielding. "He insulted not only me but my father. Sir Hezer, tell me, is that not sufficient grounds to accept a challenge?" Hezer finds himself completely blindsided by the boy's flawless logic and steely composure. He covers his mouth, a conflicted expression crossing his face, before finally conceding the point. "Your reasoning is sound." He then turns to Cyan, his voice firm. "Young master, let's get you tended to." As Hezer leads the blubbering boy away, he casts one last glance back at Eugene. "Young master Eugene, I do hope we meet again." Ciel offers a cheerful little wave, adding, "See you later." Eugene returns the gesture with a small wave of his own. "Goodbye." Later that day, Eugene absolutely demolishes a massive feast, eating with the ferocious appetite of a warrior who just had an excellent workout. Nana approaches him, notepad in hand. With a chicken leg still hanging from his mouth, young master Eugene asks if she discovered what he needed to know. Nana reports that 3 more young masters are scheduled to arrive tomorrow at noon, with 2 others, Gargus and Dara, set to arrive in the evening via the warp gate. Eugene takes another huge bite of chicken, chewing thoughtfully. They're all gathering sooner than he anticipated. This could only mean one thing. The bloodline continuation ceremony was imminent. After finishing, he steps out onto a grand balcony with a commanding view of the entire estate. As he gazes out, a A single name echoes in his mind. He stands there, a lone figure dwarfed by the colossal legacy of his ancestor. This is how the legend where one becomes strongest Manhwa hides begins, with a silent challenge. He looks up at the sky, a fierce determination igniting in his eyes, as he makes a vow to the man who has been dead for 300 years. I am going to utterly dominate your descendants, and I hope you won't be too upset about it. He clenches his fist tightly. It's not as if he ever asked to become one of them. It was just a damned reincarnation. Despite this, a competitive, fiery grin spreads across his face. For this reincarnation has granted him a new opportunity, a chance to prove, once and for all, who the superior warrior truly is. Inside a lavish, sun-drenched chamber, the twins, Cyan and Seal, stood before an elegant and imposing woman. Beside their instructor, Hezar, held his head in a deep bow, the atmosphere thick with unspoken condemnation. Cyan nervously averted his eyes from the woman's piercing gaze. She looked down upon him, her fan held with practiced delicacy, as her voice sliced through the oppressive silence. So, with a sharp tap of her fan, she laid out the humiliating facts, her tone dripping with an icy sweetness. My son, Cyan, challenged some boy from a collateral family and was defeated. This was Anacelia, the second wife of the Patriarch and the formidable mother of the twins. Hezar could only affirm her statement with a grim yes. A chilling, predatory smile graced Anacelia's lips, an expression that never reached her cold eyes. Cyan, she called out softly. Come here. Cyan flinched but obeyed, stepping forward with his head hung low and profound. Without a sliver of warning, she struck him across the chest with her fan, the sound cracking sharply against the golden lion emblem embroidered on his jacket. She pressed the fan firmly into his chest, her cruel smile never once faltering. Not only, she continued, but you lost in a single, pathetic strike. Cyan cried out in a pained voice, Mother, it hurts. Her eyes narrowed, her voice dropping to an icy, unyielding command. Stay still. Her sharp gaze then shifted to the instructor. Hezar, the story of how a nobody becomes strongest Manhwa hides its secrets well, but this is absurd. Are you absolutely certain that boy has never she asked, her face a mask of cold calculation. Hezar bowed his head even lower. Yeah, my lady. The son of Sir Guard, Eugene, had absolutely no trace of mana in his body. Anacelia redirected her attention to her daughter. Seal, explain to me, precisely, how your brother lost. Seal recounted the duel with chilling, perfect clarity. At the very start of the match, Eugene thrust his spear forward. My brother was taken by surprise and tried to fall back, but Eugene's spear was simply faster. Anacelia's eyes darkened as the humiliating pieces clicked into place. So, that was it. The entire affair ended with a single. Cyan lowered his head further, unable to meet his mother's furious and deeply disappointed gaze. He looked up at her, his eyes brimming with fear. Mother! A sharp slap echoed through the opulent room, her hand connecting hard across his face. Her features were twisted in a mask of pure rage. How dare you challenge someone to a duel only to lose in front of such low-born commoners, she screeched. And to a boy who has never so much as trained with mana? Her fury was rooted entirely in her own wounded pride. She told him their father was returning soon and demanded to know what she could possibly tell him. Do you have any idea how much that old hag Theonis will laugh at my expense? She shrieked. Cyan finally broke down completely, sobbing and apologizing again and again. I'm sorry, mother. I'm so very sorry. Anacelia ignored his tears and barked at the instructor. Hezar could only reply with a quiet, yes, my lady. Her eyes seemed to glow with a menacing light as she glared daggers at him. Right now, I want to kill you with my own two hands, she hissed. However, you are a knight my husband happens to favor. She then gave him a new directive. Train Cyan until he would rather die than shame me like this ever again. Yes, my lady, Hezar replied, bowing deeply and Anacelia dismissed them with an imperious flick of her hand. Take him and leave my sight. Hezar placed a comforting hand on Cyan's shoulder, leading the weeping boy away as Anacelia watched with cold, unforgiving eyes. The heavy doors thudded shut, leaving her alone in the silent room with Seal. Anacelia snapped her fan shut with a sharp, angry crack. She let out a long, slow breath, fanning herself to try and cool her simmering rage, but from behind the fan, her purple eyes remained as cold as ice. Her gaze, sharp and calculating, softens as she lowers her weapon. She calls out to her daughter Seal, who responds with perfect obedience, yes, mother. A sly, cunning smile plays on Ancelia's lips. That boy. Eugene, wasn't it? I want you to stay close to him. Seal, perplexed, asks. Ancilia elaborates, noting that a boy this powerful without any formal mana training is a fascinating anomaly. It's a classic tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true potential, she muses, her thoughts taking a much darker turn. She admits to herself that her first instinct is to have the boy eliminated immediately, but such an act would cast suspicion directly upon her. And within the Lionheart clan, taking a life draws the unwavering attention of the guardians of the family code, a sacred line that even she dares not cross. Therefore, she advises her daughter, it is best to remain near him. Keep your friends close and your potential rivals even closer. A bright smile blossoms on Seal's face, her own curiosity now thoroughly piqued. Very well, mother. I want to discover more about him regardless. I will befriend Eugene. A genuinely pleased, yet terrifyingly shrewd smile graces Ancelia's lips. Her intricate scheme has officially been set in motion. The following day, the final 3 children from the collateral branches made their arrival. Deacon, aged 11, Hansen, at 14, and Juice, the youngest of them at 10 years old. Each of them bears the signature white hair of the Lionheart clan, though their personalities are worlds apart, and as they were arriving, Eugene was already deep into his training regimen, out on the grounds, pushing his body through a grueling run with sweat pouring from his brow. Nina sprints to catch up with him, calling his name breathlessly. He greets her with a casual nod, never once breaking his powerful stride. She pants, finally managing to say, "They've arrived." He glances over his shoulder, assuming the last of the branch family children must be here. "I see," he replies, but Nina stammers, her eyes wide with a look bordering on panic. "No, the head of the entire family is here as well." Eugene freezes mid-stride, coming to a dead stop as he wipes the sweat from his face. The leader of the Lionhearts, the Patriarch himself. He immediately turns and starts for the main house, but Nina cries out in a panic, pleading with him to wait and change his clothes first. He simply waves her off, stating that if he waits, he will be the only one who is late. He decides it's far better to be sweaty than tardy, quickly toweling his face dry before heading straight for the main entrance. There, the entire household is assembled, lined up with military precision to welcome their esteemed leader. All the children from both the main and branch families stand waiting in a heavy, tense silence. Eugene quietly slips into formation with the other branch children, his gaze sweeping over them with his typical, critical eye. His attention then shifts to the main family's group. Positioned next to Cyan is their mother, the fiercely ambitious second wife, Ancilia. Standing before her is another stern-faced woman, Theonis, the legal first wife and Ancilia's most bitter rival. And beside Theonis stands a young boy bearing a heavy, somber expression. This is Eugene Lionheart, the eldest son and the undisputed heir to the family legacy. 2 grand carriages and 2 riders on horseback are making their way up the long, impressive driveway. The man leading the procession is imposing, with long, flowing hair of mixed gold and gray, radiating an aura of pure, unquestionable authority. This is none other than Gilead, the current patriarch. His golden eyes, so much like Eugene's, are piercingly sharp and intense, sizing up everything and everyone in a single, sweeping glance. Following closely behind him is his younger brother, Cyan. As the patriarch dismounts, his eldest son, Eugene, averts his eyes, visibly nervous under his father's powerful gaze. Gilead strides up to him, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Eugene, you've certainly grown," he remarks, a faint smile touching his face. "But have your skills grown to match?" Eugene trembles slightly, professing that he is striving to meet his father's expectations. Gilead merely gazes down at him, his expression an unreadable mask, before turning away without offering a single word. He then shifts his focus to Anastasia and her 2 children, Cyan and Seal. "Seal, I almost didn't recognize you. Children certainly grow up in the blink of an eye." Seal greets him with a cheerful, "We missed you, father." In stark contrast, Cyan remains standing there, sullen and utterly silent. The patriarch's attention is then captured by another man in the crowd calling out to him, "Guilford." He walks over to the man, who is cradling a newborn baby, and Gilead's typically stern expression softens just a fraction. "I heard you had a son," he says, his voice losing some of its edge. "My apologies for not being present for the celebration." The man, Guilford, nervously reassures his powerful brother that he shouldn't trouble himself with such matters. At last, Gilead directs his gaze toward the final group. This group consists of the children from the collateral family lines. He strides toward them, his immense presence alone commanding the absolute attention of every child. He surveys each one of them carefully before announcing, "Let's all have a meal together." A wide, knowing smile then spreads across his face. "We will discuss the matter of the bloodline continuation," he declares, all while standing under the warm glow of a magnificent crystal chandelier. The future generation of the Lionheart clan is now gathered for this pivotal meal. All 9 children slated to participate in the bloodline continuation ritual are present. They are seated around a long, elegant dining table where the air is thick with unspoken tension and quiet anticipation. At the head of this very table sits the patriarch, Gilead, flanked by his children from the direct lineage. Beside him are the perceptive Seal, the somber Ariode, and, quite surprisingly, a guest with long blonde hair. Across from them are the children from the branch families, Eugene included, all silently sizing each other up in a prelude where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true potential. Eugene's eyes scan the newcomers, landing on a large, muscular boy named Gargus and a sharp-looking, dark-skinned girl named Desra. He recognizes them instantly. They were the 2 individuals who had arrived through the warp gates alongside the patriarch. These must be the top contenders from the most prominent branch families, he thinks to himself, but his gaze soon shifts to another figure. He focuses on the unfamiliar blonde man seated with the main family. And who is he? Eugene wonders. This dinner was supposed to be for family only. Across the expansive table, Seal appears to be pondering the very same question, studying the stranger with undisguised curiosity. She leans closer to her father and inquires, "Father, who is our guest?" Gilead simply hums, lost in thought for a while. He mentions he was planning to introduce him later, but the guest just smiles and leans forward eagerly, interjecting, "Oh, it's quite all right." Eugene takes a calm sip of his tea, watching the entire scene unfold with quiet, calculating observation. The man suddenly beams at the assembly. He waves enthusiastically at everyone present. "Hello, children," he chirps with a friendly tone. "My name is Loberian from the Red Tower." That name alone sends a palpable shockwave through the entire room. Liberian, Gargus, and the other children gasp in perfect unison. One of the boys is so stunned he accidentally spits out his drink, while another exclaims, "The Tower Master of the Red Tower." Even Eugene is caught completely off guard, finding himself coughing and choking on his tea. Liberian turns to him and asks if he's all right, but Eugene just waves a hand dismissively. Eugene manages to choke out, "Yes, I am fine," but inside, his mind is reeling. The Master of the Red Tower. That means he, a disciple of my old comrade, Sienna. Or, to be more precise, the disciple of her disciple. The old legends flood back into his memory. 300. Sienna became the youngest Tower Master in all of history. She was so brilliant, in fact, that she single-handedly rewrote the very textbooks on magic. Even to this very day, the masters of both the Red and Green Towers hold Sienna the Wise in the highest reverence, honoring her as their Grandmaster. Eugene gazed at the Patriarch, an almost surreal sensation washing over him. To think he would encounter someone with a link to his former life, right here of all places. The Patriarch's voice sliced through his reverie. "You are Eugene, I presume? I've heard a great deal about you from Theonis." Gilead's eyes narrowed, his entire demeanor shifting to become lethally serious. "My son leveled a grave insult against both you and your father." Seated across the table, Cyan flinched, visibly trembling beneath his father's crushing gaze. "Yes," Eugene confirmed, before swiftly adding, "but I harbor no ill will." Gilead leaned back, a faint, knowing smirk playing on his lips. "That's because you were the victor of the duel. It would be the same." "Even had I been defeated," Eugene declared, his voice resonating with the unshakable conviction of a true warrior, "the outcome would be no different. If I were too feeble to defend my own honor, then I would simply have to bear the humiliation that comes with such weakness." The Patriarch studied him, a flicker of profound approval igniting in his eyes. He stated plainly, "You are a better man than my son." He then turned his attention to Cyan, taking his son's hand in his own. "Cyan." The boy responded with a faint whisper, "Yes, father." "I am not ashamed that you were defeated," Gilead said, his voice stern, yet carefully measured. "I am, however, disappointed that you seem more concerned with my reaction than you are ashamed of your own disgraceful conduct." Cyan hung his head low, utterly incapable of mustering a single word in his own defense as Gilead continued his very public lesson. "The duel was instigated by your insult, and yet, even in defeat, you failed to offer Eugene an apology." Cyan could only stammer in response. "That is because you bear the name Lionheart. The Great Vermouth is your forefather," Gilead proclaimed, his voice echoing with the full weight of his authority. "If his blood truly flows through your veins, you must learn to honor not only yourself, but your adversary as well." Cyan's gaze shifted across the table to Eugene, the immense gravity of his father's words finally beginning to settle in. With a deep flush of shame coloring his face, he managed to force out the words, "I apologize." Eugene merely scoffed in his mind, thinking, "It's painfully obvious you're only saying that because you're being forced to." Gilead then shifted his focus back to Eugene. "You mentioned your father is named Guard. I must confess, the name is unfamiliar to me." "That's perfectly understandable," Eugene replied smoothly, not missing a beat. "Even I sometimes think our branch of the family lives in the absolute middle of nowhere." The Patriarch glanced upward, as if mentally tracing the sprawling branches of the Lionheart family tree. "Did you acquire your skills from your father?" Eugene answered. "He taught me the fundamentals. Everything else I learned on my own." The other children were utterly floored. Dira stared at him in wide-eyed disbelief. "He trained himself?" Gargus was just as stunned. "And he thrashed Cyan while being self-taught?" The classic tale of how a hero *** becomes strongest, Manhwa hides *** their true potential. Eugene mused internally, as a wide, amused grin spread across the Patriarch's face. This ceremony was shaping up to be incredibly entertaining. Just then, a procession of maids entered the grand hall, pushing carts laden with a truly magnificent feast. They began to serve one exquisite course after another. The vast table was soon overflowing with succulent lobster, perfectly roasted meats, and rich, savory soups, alongside an array of delicate pastries. It was a banquet truly fit for a king. Gilead gestured grandly towards the spread. "I trust you will all enjoy the meal. Eat your fill. You must all be famished." Later that evening, beneath the glow of a full moon, a hush fell over the mansion. The grand meal was concluded. The plates had all been cleared away. The children were once again seated at the table, a palpable, nervous energy now crackling in the room. Gilead delicately dabbed his mouth with a napkin before getting straight to the point. "As I stated previously, I have summoned you all here to formally explain the rules for this year's bloodline continuation ceremony." His gaze swept over Eugene and the other children from the branch families. They all listened with bated breath, aware that this moment will shape their destiny. Then, to the astonishment of everyone present, it's Seal who breaks the silence. Seal declares, "I realize it's unusual for me to voice this, but I find the traditional ceremony to be profoundly unfair." Gilead nods slowly in complete agreement. He elaborates on how the age-old rules were intentionally designed to benefit the direct lineage, effectively making it impossible for any branch family member to have a fair chance. "3 of my very own children are set to participate in this rite," he announces, his gaze briefly falling upon Eward. "However, my goal is to assess the true potential not only of my offspring, but of every single one of you who carries the honorable Lionheart name." His voice resonates with unshakable conviction. This ceremony exists for one purpose: to discover the true successor to the legendary spirit of the Great Vermouth. Bloodline, whether direct or collateral, means nothing before such a legacy. Eugene dips his head, a faint, authentic smile gracing his lips. Vermouth, he muses internally, your descendant possesses a kindness you never did. It is for this very reason, Gilead proclaims, that we have enlisted the help of an external specialist. On cue, Loberian rises to his feet, a wide, confident grin on his face. And that, my friends, is my cue, he exclaims. With a playful wink and a snap of his fingers, a brilliant flash of cerulean light erupts, and a magical projection materializes, hovering majestically above the dining table. Behold, a complex luminous maze, Loberian announces. For this upcoming ceremony, you will all be tasked with navigating a magical labyrinth of my own design. Each of you will begin at a unique entry point, with the ultimate objective of vanquishing the elite beast that lurks at its very core. Naturally, he adds with a mischievous grin, summoning the spectral image of a truly monstrous creature. You will need to overcome numerous traps and endure fierce battles just to reach it. He then materializes a sphere of crackling blue energy in his palm. But fear not. Every event that transpires within this domain is merely a magical illusion of my own making. None of what you will experience is tangible reality. His eyes glint with a hint of mischief. Consider it a thrilling, action-packed escapade. Eugene is already dissecting the magical display. Summoning magic interwoven with high-level illusion, he silently observes, concluding that one would need at least that level of mastery to even be considered a tower master. Loberian clarifies the primary objective. Should any one of you 9 contenders manage to defeat the final boss, the ceremony will conclude immediately. You will all then be graded according to your individual performance. One of the younger participants, Hansen, nervously inquires what would happen if none of them could clear the labyrinth. Loberian just grins. Well, of course, if you're too afraid, you're welcome to simply remain at the but I can assure you, that won't earn you a very high score. Eugene, ever practical, cuts directly to the chase. If one of us defeats the boss, what is the prize? The Patriarch, Gilead, closes his eyes for a brief moment, a subtle smile playing on his lips. Then, his eyes fly open, blazing with an intense, powerful light. I shall grant the victor permission to choose any single treasure from our family's fabled and legendary vault. For the very first time, a flicker of genuine, unbridled excitement ignites in Eugene's eyes. Whoa, he thinks. Now, that is a truly incredible prize. Later, as Eugene traverses a long, candlelit corridor, his mind is already a whirlwind of strategy. A confident smirk creeps onto his face. Winning this ceremony is a foregone conclusion, he muses. The only real question is which treasure I will claim from the treasury. His expression sets into a look of pure, unshakable determination. He has no intention of losing. As he continues on, he spots Gargus and Desra positioned in the corridor ahead, seemingly waiting just for him. They turn in unison, their expressions grim and unmistakably challenging. It's a classic tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his power, but Eugene's recent display had blown his cover. Now the sharks were circling, and he was facing the 2 strongest of his generation. It seems Eugene's quiet moment is over. 2 kids from the branch families, Gargus and Desra, have tracked him down. The larger one, Gargus, wastes no time and gets right down to business, sizing him up with a critical eye. Are the rumors true, he demands. Did you actually defeat Cyan Lionheart in a duel? Eugene simply meets their gaze, utterly unfazed by the confrontation. He feels no need to boast or elaborate, offering a curt, one-word confirmation, yeah. Clear, he has no patience for this interrogation. If you're finished with your questions, I'm leaving. With that, he turns his back and begins to walk away, leaving them stunned on the lavish red carpet. Gargus, completely taken aback, is left with his hand outstretched in disbelief by Eugene's abrupt dismissal. A bewildered, huh, is all he can muster as Eugene strides away without a single backward glance. While Gargus remains rooted in confusion, Desra observes with her arms crossed, her expression far more calculating. She appears to be analyzing both the situation and Eugene with much greater scrutiny. As night falls, the main estate settles into a deep silence beneath a brilliant full moon. However, in a deserted training courtyard, Eugene practices in solitude, wielding a wooden sword with a level of focus that goes far beyond his apparent age. His movements are a storm of explosive power, his form a blur of controlled fury. Every swing slices through the air with a piercing whistle, his technique flawless and his eyes ablaze with a fierce intensity. This is no child at play, this is the discipline of a legend in the making. It's the relentless regimen of a seasoned warrior, the kind of secret training where a hero becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true potential. He spins, channeling his entire being into a devastating, sweeping strike that conjures a vortex of dust and wind. It's a technique executed with a mastery that no 13-year-old should rightfully possess. He concludes his form, but then freezes. He can feel their presence. Standing framed in the arched doorway are Gargus and Desra, simply observing him. They remain silent, Gargus looking formidable with his arms crossed while Desra holds a pair of practice spears. It's obvious this isn't a chance encounter. A flicker of annoyance crosses Eugene's face. What are they doing here? He wonders. Why haven't they gone back yet? He had been hoping for some undisturbed time to train. Abruptly, Gargus and Desra begin to advance toward him with clear intent, their footsteps resounding in the quiet courtyard. It seems this conversation is far from. Gargus halts directly in front of him, a peculiar look of resolve etched on his face. Eugene just stares back, contemplating what this muscle-headed kid could possibly want now. With a loud ripping sound, Gargus tears his own expensive shirt right off his torso. The fine fabric shreds as he flexes, his muscles swelling under the moonlight. He stands there, bare-chested and beaming with pride, as steam practically billows from his skin. Eugene merely watches his expression, a perfect mask of stone. Gargus lets out a strained grunt of exertion, flexing with even greater force. His entire upper body goes rigid, veins bulging as he strikes a theatrical pose. He then pivots to showcase his back muscles, which ripple in an impressive display. The entire spectacle is so absurdly over the top that Eugene can only gaze on, completely dumbfounded. Eugene's internal thoughts are brief and brutally honest. Is he an idiot? Gargus then swivels back around, puffing his chest out with pride. You can touch it, he offers with great enthusiasm, but Eugene instantly shuts him down with a deadpan reply, no thanks. Unfazed, Gargus proudly proclaims that his family possesses a secret muscle enhancement formula. With an air of sharing the world's most profound secret, he explains that it is a unique elixir designed to accelerate muscle development without any mana buildup, and he asserts with absolute certainty that it comes with absolutely zero negative side effects. Gargus leans closer, flexing his arms behind his head, and asks if Eugene has any interest. Eugene glances up at him, completely unimpressed. Are you here trying to sell me some kind of snake oil? He's already calling the man's bluff, knowing full well there's no such thing as a free lunch, especially when it comes to bizarre miracle potions. Just then, Desra chimes in from the side, revealing the major catch. She calmly explains that whether you're a man or a woman, if you ingest that medicine, you will grow a beard. Her attention then shifts entirely to Eugene. She had heard he used a spear against Cyan. So, why are you using a sword now? She asks, while Gargus continues to strike poses in the background. Eugene simply replies that he uses both. Desra processes this, asking if he can truly wield any weapon proficiently. To put his claim to the test, Desra suddenly hurls one of her practice spears toward him. It tumbles end over end through the air as she prepares for his reaction. With a sharp thwack, Eugene snatches the spear from the air effortlessly, his expression hardening, his grip on the shaft unyielding. He's ready for what comes next. A fierce, competitive grin spreads across Desra's face as she declares that the spear is her true specialty, throwing down the gauntlet with a challenge. Duel me with it. Eugene weighs his options. Fighting her seems far more appealing than listening to the other guy's ridiculous sales pitch for a muscle potion. Besides, he's genuinely curious. He wants to gauge the skill level of the high-ranking members of the Branch family. A confident, almost predatory smile touches his lips as he accepts. All right. They take their positions in the training yard, facing one another with spears in hand. The tension in the air becomes sharp and real. This is no friendly spar. This is a genuine test of strength. Eugene looks over and sees Gargus standing directly between them. He asks what on earth he thinks he's doing. Shirtless and dead serious, Gargus declares, I am the judge. Gargus strikes a dramatic pose, raising his arm high, and announces that while it may be a duel, it must be conducted fairly. Eugene looks at him with a tired expression. The guy's simple-minded, muscle-obsessed antics remind him of a certain blockhead he knew in his past life. He can't help but wonder if this kid is a descendant of his old comrade, Molin. Gargus explains the rules. They start when he gives the signal. Desra is ready, but Eugene just sighs, telling the self-appointed judge to hurry up and get it over with. Desra watches Eugene, her eyes narrowed in disbelief. He can use a sword and a spear, she thinks to herself. Don't make me laugh. She's convinced he's just a jack of all trades and a master of none. Her grip tightens on her spear, her knuckles turning white as she vows to show him that spearmanship isn't something one can simply dabble in. Unaware that the true power that *** becomes strongest, Manhwa hides *** is standing right before her. With a furious shout that echoes across the courtyard, Gargus bellows, "Start!" The very moment the word is spoken, Desra explodes into action. She lunges forward, seizing the initiative, her spear tip scraping along the ground and kicking up a shower of sparks. But Eugene's reaction is instantaneous. His eyes, honed by 1,000 battles, track her every move. He pivots on his heel, sidestepping her thrust with perfect timing. Her spear slams into the ground right where he was standing just a split second before. Desra lets out a frustrated grunt. She recovers, but Eugene is already back in his stance, a strange, powerful aura beginning to emanate from his very being. His eyes glow faintly in the dark as he analyzes her. Her stance, her form, her breathing. He's not just defending, he's dissecting her entire technique, and he finds it lacking. His form is flawless, not a single opening to be found, Eugene mused. He remained utterly motionless, his spear held in a perfect defensive posture. His voice cut through the silence of the yard. What's the holdup? He dipped the tip of his spear, a clear and goading invitation. Bring it. That quiet challenge struck her pride more sharply than any roar ever could. Desire ground her teeth, a low, furious hiss escaping her lips as indignation flared within her. She couldn't stomach his sheer arrogance. Unleashing a fierce battle cry, she surged forward once more, channeling every ounce of her frustration and might into a single, direct assault. Their weapons collided with a deafening crack, the force of the impact sending a palpable shockwave rippling through the night air. The sharp report of wood striking wood echoed into the darkness. They were locked in a tense stalemate, two silhouettes locked in combat clashing under the pale glow of the moon. The duel had truly ignited. Desra drove forward, putting all of her weight and will behind the push. Her face was a mask of pure exertion as she desperately tried to overwhelm him. Yet, Eugene met her raw force with impeccable technique, deflecting her blow with almost casual ease. A subtle energy shimmered around his spear as he masterfully redirected her momentum. Desra gasped, her eyes widening in disbelief. She could feel the staggering gulf in their skill. It's like a tale where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true power. He wasn't just strong, he was an immovable wall. A furious exchange of blows erupted between them. Imaginary sparks seemed to fly as their wooden weapons met again and again, the sheer velocity of their exchange becoming a blur too swift for the eye to follow. Through it all, Eugene remained perfectly composed, parrying every single strike. She's remarkably skilled, he thought, especially for someone not using any mana. For someone her age, her potential was truly staggering. Still, a confident smirk tugged at the corner of his lips. As talented as she was simply not in his league. Not yet, at least. With a sudden, sharp pivot, he swatted her spear away, the sheer force of the blow shattering her stance and sending her stumbling. It was only for a crucial second, but it was enough. Eugene lowered his weapon once more, a relaxed smile gracing his features. Is that all you've got? You can't even land. The taunt landed perfectly. Her face flushed crimson with fury as she screamed back, "Shut your mouth." She was utterly bewildered by his skill. He's deflecting everything I throw at him without taking a single step, she thought, grinding her teeth in frustration. She convinced herself that his overconfidence would be his undoing. Spotting what she believed was an opening, she lunged forward in one final, desperate gamble, pouring every last shred of her remaining energy into a powerful, all-or-nothing thrust. But Eugene was more than ready. Their spears met in a lightning-fast exchange of blows, a rapid-fire series of blocks and parries that created a whirlwind of impacts around them. And through it all, he hadn't even broken a sweat. Her final, desperate lunge met nothing but the cold stone of the courtyard as Eugene sidestepped again, effortlessly evading her attack. Before she could even begin to recover her balance, he floated around to her side, his movement a seamless, fluid blur. In an instant, he was on her flank, her posture completely compromised. A wild, triumphant look flashed in Desra's eyes. She thought she had him. She swept her spear low, aiming to take out his legs. "You can't block this from that angle," she screamed. Her spear carved an arc just above the ground, aimed with perfect precision to sweep his feet from under him. The wooden tip closed the distance to his ankle in the blink of an eye. But with a solid, definitive thud, Eugene's foot stomped, pinning her weapon firmly to the ground. He had completely neutralized her attack without even using his own spear. The jarring impact shot up the shaft and through her entire body. He had used her own momentum against her, trapping her weapon and her stance. A strangled cry of sheer disbelief escaped her lips as her hands were forced down by the pinned spear. Her eyes widened in absolute horror as she looked up to see the point of Eugene's spear resting just a single inch from her throat. The duel was over. Eugene stood in perfect balance, his weapon held with unwavering steadiness, while Desra was frozen in place, utterly and completely defeated. In the background, Gargus watched the entire exchange with his arms crossed, his face a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. It was Gargus who finally broke the stunned silence hangs in the air before the announcer's voice, filled with awe, makes the official call. Eugene Lionheart is the winner. Having proven his absolute superiority, Eugene now faces a completely different kind of challenge. Gargus approaches him, his eyes burning with a desperate intensity, and makes his plea. "We need to combine our strengths," he insists, but his words fall on deaf ears. Eugene is already back in his room trying to get some sleep, but Gargus has followed him, standing over his bed like a persistent shadow. A vein bulges on Eugene's forehead. He glares up at the big guy, completely fed up. "You woke me up just to tell me that?" But Gargus is relentless, his arms crossed, his expression dead serious. "I want to hear your answer," making it perfectly clear he's not leaving until he gets one. Eugene sits up, trying to reason with him, and points out the obvious flaw in the plan. "We're all entering the labyrinth from different places. How are we supposed to team up?" But Gargus has already thought. He argues that even if the entrances are different, the final destination is the same, the boss at the very center. He knows for a fact the main family twins will be working together. Eugene clarifies just to be sure. "You're saying we meet up at the center and fight the boss together?" Gargus gives a firm yes. Eugene just scoffs, the old, arrogant Hamill bleeding through. "I'm pretty sure I can handle it alone," he says with unshakable confidence, adding a little jab. "You're getting ahead of yourself." He glances over to the doorway where Dara has been leaning this whole time, quietly listening. Swallowing her pride, Dara finally speaks, her voice strained. "But you're strong," she admits. She believes that with his help, they might actually have a chance. Now Eugene's curiosity is piqued. This is clearly about more than just a prize for them. He leans back and asks, "Why do you want to win so badly?" Dara's voice fills with passion as she steps forward. She explains that in the entire history of the ceremony, the collateral families have never once won. "But we have a chance this time," she insists. Their team, her, and the kid who took down Cyan, could finally be the ones to break the streak. They both look at him, hitting him with the one question they think will sway him. "Don't you want to beat the direct line?" They're appealing to a feeling Eugene simply doesn't have. He just stares back, his expression cold. His ambitions are so much bigger than petty family squabbles. He's not here to beat the direct line. The one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true goal, and his is to surpass a legend. In the mansion, Ancilla stands by a grand window, cloaked in shadow. The moon illuminates her silhouette as she gazes, her mind deep in thought. She's thinking about Levelian, the Red Tower Master. She suspects he's here to take Eward, the first son, as his disciple, a move that could endanger her own plans. She knows Eward has always been more of a scholar than a warrior, preferring magic over the sword like a proper Lionheart heir. If Eward leaves to study magic, he's effectively giving up his claim as Patriarch, and in his absence, her own children, Cyan and Seal, would have a clear path to power. But there's a problem. The bloodline ceremony and her son's recent, humiliating loss. She reflects on her difficult position as the second wife. She's had to fight and claw for every ounce of her children's status, to be defeated by a boy from a branch family. It's a stain on all her hard work. Her hand tightens on her. The delicate wood groaned, protesting beneath the force of her rage, but suddenly, a new, calculating thought sliced through her fury. What if that upstart, Eugene, blazed through the labyrinth before anyone else? What if his talent is so monstrous that he utterly shames the entire main family? A wicked, yet brilliant idea began to sprout. If Eugene overpowers them all, then Cyan's defeat is no longer a singular disgrace. It would be completely buried in the ensuing chaos. And Celia could manipulate, transforming her son's humiliation into a collective failure for all her rivals. And so, 3 days later, the window for scheming had closed. The bloodline continuation ceremony was at last underway. The children assembled in a sun-dappled forest clearing, standing before a swirling azure vortex of pure mana, the very entrance to the labyrinth. Lorian, wearing a cheerful grin, gathered a sphere of raw magic between his palms, its light throbbing with untamed energy. He then released it, sending shimmering tendrils of light arcing outwards to each of the young participants. The light coiled around Cyan and Seal, who both accepted it with focused resolve. Gargis and Desira were also bathed in the ethereal glow, feeling its potent energy surge through their veins. Lorian then announced their first trial, to manifest their own weapons. He instructed them to harness their imagination and shape the light into the weapon of their choosing. A handful of the other children immediately began to struggle, their concentration faltering as they attempted to wrestle the magical light into a usable form. Seal, however, experienced no such difficulty. The light flowed around, effortlessly coalescing into the shape of an elegant and lethal rapier. Her eyes lit up with unadulterated joy. Wow! Utterly astonished by her own creation, she gave it a few graceful swings, the magical blade leaving shimmering after images hanging in the air. Her talent was clearly on another level. She then asked, "What happens if the sword breaks?" Lorian chuckled, explaining that since the labyrinth and their weapons were forged from the very same magic, her blade would be unbreakable within its walls. She let out a triumphant yell. Her curiosity piqued, she then wondered if she could create an animal instead. Lorian clarified that while a non-living golem was possible, forging an actual living creature was completely out of the question. Another boy then posed the simple question, "Why can't we create?" Lorian's smile remained fixed, but his tone shifted to one of instruction. He explained that the creation of life is a fundamental taboo of magic, a sacred power reserved for living beings alone. The boy's expression shifted to one of dawning comprehension. He finally understood. Some boundaries were simply never meant to be crossed. A moment later, Gargis let out a roar as he molded his magic into a massive greatsword, a weapon as large and unsubtle as his own personality. He proudly declared that it was just like his favorite blade from back home. Without missing a beat, Desira dryly interjected, "Did anyone actually ask?" Dara, for her part, formed a sleek and deadly its design a perfect reflection of her focused and pragmatic combat style. Cyan, meanwhile, created a classic long sword, a confident smirk returning to his face. He was clearly ready for a rematch. The eldest son, Eward, materialized a simple, almost delicate blade, looking more like an afterthought than a true weapon. The rest of the children managed to shape basic swords, looking clumsy and nervous as they clutched their magical creations. And then, there was Eugene. He calmly formed a short sword and a sturdy, practical round. No flash, no fanfare, just pure, battle-tested pragmatism. This is how a protagonist who becomes strongest Manhwa hides his true depth. Sile then walked up to him, her brother Cyan trailing suspiciously close behind her. She asked him point blank, "What will you do if you encounter me inside the labyrinth?" She leaned in closer, drawing nearer, a playful challenge dancing in her eyes. "So, are you going to face me?" Eugene ignores her question, turning his gaze instead to Lorian and asks, "Is combat permitted?" The Tower Master nods in confirmation. Competition, after all, is the very essence of this trial. Suddenly, the Patriarch's words resurfaced in his mind. Gilead had impressed upon them that even though they were competitors, they were also kin, and that cooperation was every bit as crucial as individual strength. Eugene cast a glance towards Seal, the word family echoing strangely in his thoughts. For Hamill, a man who only ever knew comrades in arms, the entire concept felt foreign and bizarre. Seal offers him a sly, knowing smile, as if she knows the secret every becomes strongest Manhwa hides, the true power lurking beneath the surface. Her expression completely unnerves him. He visibly recoils, thinking to himself how utterly disagreeable she is. He's a war veteran in his 30s trapped in a child's body, and he hasn't the faintest clue how to deal with a girl like this. Lorian claps his hands together, propelling the proceedings forward. He materializes several luminous necklaces out of thin air and instructs everyone to wear one. He then starts distributing the magical pendants to each of the children present. Lorian clarifies that the necklace is directly linked to their consciousness, and should they experience a moment of extreme duress within the labyrinth, it will activate automatically. His demeanor shifts, becoming serious for the very. He sternly warns them that its activation will be treated as a life or death emergency, compelling him to intervene without a moment's delay. Eugene grasped the implication instantly. It's a fail-safe, an essential precaution for sending a group of children into what is effectively a magical death trap. Lorian adds that there is also a manual escape method. If anyone feels they cannot proceed, they simply need to tap the gem and cry out, "Help me!" to be extracted from the labyrinth, a way to forfeit while keeping their life and limbs. With the regulations clearly laid out, Lorien gestures toward the shimmering blue portal. He informs them that they may all enter as a group, but then adds one final detail with a mischievous grin. Even though they're using the same the moment they cross the threshold, they will each be transported to a different, separate path. With their enchanted weapons at the ready, the young Lionhearts stride toward the portal, their momentous journey about to commence. Seal turns back to face Eugene one final time, offering a wave and a surprisingly cheerful smile. "Do your best in there," she called. Eugene offers a terse nod in response. "Right, you too." And with that final thought, Eugene steps through the shimmering gateway, utterly consumed by the brilliant blue radiance. His boots make contact with solid ground with a satisfying thud. He finds himself standing utterly alone in a cold, dark stone corridor. The trial had officially begun. A wicked grin spreads across Eugene's face as he recalls the countless dungeons he had crawled through in his previous life. This was familiar territory. I explored so many labyrinths I got sick of the sight of them, he muses. He glances upward, confirming the ceiling is completely sealed off. There would be no easy escape. He instantly drops into a familiar, practiced stance, his body flowing with the muscle memory forged over 100 battles. He taps the wall with the tip of his sword. Solid stone. The path ahead is the only one available. He quickly assesses his surroundings. The corridor is constricting, far too tight for a greatsword or a lengthy spear. And that was precisely why he had chosen the sword and shield combination. His grin widens. This classic, all-purpose setup is perfect for any scenario, but especially for a tight space like this. His golden eyes gleam with unwavering confidence. This labyrinth was clearly designed for mere children. For Hamill the Fool, a seasoned hero, its level of difficulty painfully obvious. "Let's begin," he murmurs to himself. And with absolutely no trace of fear, he starts walking down the pitch-black corridor, ready to claim this entire place as his own. For an average 13-year-old, a labyrinth teeming with monsters is the stuff of nightmares, not a playground. And for the less seasoned children, the initial wave of foes is a terrifying onslaught of snarling, gelatinous slimes. One of the boys finds himself completely swamped by the creatures. He lets out a blood-curdling scream, swinging his sword haphazardly as the slimes surge in on him from every conceivable angle. He stumbles and crashes to the floor, the foul creatures splattering all over him. Pinned down and paralyzed by sheer terror, he frantically fumbles for his safety necklace, his voice cracking as he screams for rescue. In a dazzling flash of cerulean light, Lobarian materializes, instantly grabbing the boy and yanking him from the jaws of danger in the absolute nick of time. They teleport away in a burst of arcane energy, leaving nothing but a puddle of vanquished slimes and a forgotten sword. Another competitor has just been eliminated from the competition. It has been merely 1 hour since the bloodline continuation ceremony began, yet already 3 children have washed out. Forced to forfeit, they stand outside the labyrinth, their heads hanging low in a mixture of shame and crushing disappointment. Back in a lavish viewing chamber, the elders are observing the proceedings. The Patriarch Gilad and the Tower Master, Lobarian, stand before the 3 disqualified children. Gilad's face is a stone mask, his gaze heavy with profound disappointment. He offers them only 3 words: "Go and rest." There is absolutely nothing more to be said. With tears welling in their eyes, the 3 youngsters meekly nod and shuffle away, their dreams of glory shattered before they even began. And just like that, the grueling trial presses onward. Gilad and Lobarian resume their positions, monitoring the remaining participants through a collection of floating magical orbs, each one locked onto a different contender. Gilad watches with a pensive, analytical gaze, stroking his chin as he speculates on the future of his lineage, wondering which child truly has the potential. The kind of story where the one who *** becomes strongest Manhwa hides *** their true nature. The view then shifts, focusing on Gargus. He's down on the ground, but he's pure grit and raw power, coiled like a spring and ready to unleash hell with his massive greatsword. He bellows and charges headlong into a pack of goblins. His approach is brutally simple and direct, obliterate everything that stands in his way. His face is a mask of sheer, unadulterated resolve as he hefts his colossal blade. The greatsword collides with a goblin's weapon, shattering the inferior steel in an instant. The boy is a veritable whirlwind of brute strength. Another goblin manages to parry his sword, but the raw force of the impact sends spiderweb cracks through the stone wall behind it. Gargus lets loose a thunderous battle cry, channeling every ounce of his immense strength into his relentless assault. He smashes right through their pathetic defenses, the stone floor groaning and cracking under the might of his blows. With one final devastating spin, he sends the goblins hurtling through the air, clearing his path forward through nothing but sheer, overwhelming power. He continues his destructive rampage, pulverizing more magical beasts into shimmering fragments of light. Lobarian offers his commentary on the boy's performance. Gargus may lack finesse, but he's plowing ahead with astonishing power, meeting every monster head-on without an ounce of hesitation. The perspective shifts once more, this time settling on Desire. Spear held at the ready, advancing with a confident and measured pace. She comes upon a cluster of slimes, but rather than charging in like Gargus, she employs a completely different tactic. With breathtaking agility, she masterfully weaves and dodges between them. Her movements are impossibly precise and economical, never wasting a single ounce of energy. She expertly uses the butt of her spear to shove one aside, creating an opening, not for an attack, but for a clean escape. Lobarian keenly observes her strategy. He notes that she understands slimes are difficult to dispatch with bladed weapons, so she has wisely chosen evasion over confrontation, opting to conserve her energy. She effortlessly slips past the final slime, proceeding down the corridor completely unscathed, much to Lorian's admiration. Dora demonstrates that she is both nimble and sharp-witted. Her focus remains solely on navigating the labyrinth, a remarkably intelligent and efficient strategy. The orb's gaze then shifts to the main family's heir, Cyan, who appears nervous yet resolute as he stands. At the entrance of a long hallway, its walls riddled with suspicious-looking holes and undeniable trap, yet Cyan simply smirks. He reflects on how his mother had provided him with a detailed map of the labyrinth long before the ceremony had even commenced. Both he and Seal had studied it meticulously, ensuring they wouldn't be ensnared by such simple traps. He crouches, picking up a small rock with a smug expression plastered on his face. With a casual flick, he tosses the rock down the hallway. The very moment it lands on the trigger plate, hundreds of razor-sharp arrows erupt from the walls, soaring harmlessly through the now empty corridor. With the trap successfully sprung, Cyan confidently dashes through the passage, completely unharmed. Lorian observes that while Cyan is overly timid, he must concede that this very same caution is precisely what's allowing him to circumvent the dangers. All things considered, it's not a poor approach. The focus then shifts Cyan's twin sister, Seal. She finds herself face to face with a goblin, which lets out a guttural roar and lunges at her, swinging a crude hammer. Seal moves with the elegance of a dancer. She gracefully sidesteps and weaves around the goblin's clumsy assault, her movements both fluid and instinctual. Letting out a sharp cry, she identifies an opening and thrusts her rapier forward, striking the goblin dead center. The monster immediately shatters into particles of golden light. It was a clean, efficient kill. She continues on her way, skipping down the corridor with cheerful confidence, only for her hasty pace to lead her directly into a dead end. Realizing her blunder, she decides to backtrack to a fork in the path she had noticed earlier. Lorian notes that Seal relies heavily on her instincts and acts swiftly, but her childish impulsiveness consistently gets her into trouble. She possesses immense talent but lacks her brother's sense of caution. Finally, the orb reveals the eldest son, Eod, confronting his own goblin opponent. He appears anxious, but he firmly stands his ground. The goblin emits a gurgling snarl, its crimson eyes glowing with malice as Eod stares at the competent creature. An expression of pure wonder washes over his face. Incredible, he whispers to himself. This is a monster forged from pure magic. He becomes so engrossed in his thoughts that he yelps in surprise when the goblin charges, forcing him to leap back at the last possible second. Despite being caught off guard, he successfully parries the attack, their magical swords clashing in a brilliant shower of sparks. He ducks beneath another wild swing and counters with a precise, clean slash of his own. The goblin instantly erupts into light, utterly defeated. Eod gazes at the fading golden particles, a bright, genuinely happy smile gracing his features. He is truly relishing this moment. Lorian turns to Gilead, remarking that Eod appears to possess a natural talent for magic. Gilead lets out a heavy sigh, a profound sadness clouding his eyes. He explains that his son has always held a deep passion for magic but was forced to renounce it out of a sense of duty. Lorian appears perplexed. Why is that? He inquires. Gilead then explains the harsh reality of his son's circumstances. Eod abandoned his dreams because he feels an obligation to become the next patriarch for the sake of his mother. And within the Lionheart clan, a lineage founded by a legendary hero, magic has always been viewed as a secondary art. Lorian nods, recognizing the familiar story where the one who becomes strongest Manhwa hides their true calling. He knows the path of a mage is arduous, but still wishes the boy would follow his passion for the arcane. Gilead's eyes then harden with hope, believing that if Iode's passion is undeniable, he would never pass up the chance to become a disciple of the Red Tower's master. Lorian averts his gaze, his expression unreadable. I can make no such promises, he states, clarifying his position. I will take Iode on as a personal favor. However, if the boy's potential proves insufficient, I cannot accept him as my disciple. The standards of the Red Tower are absolute. Gilead offers a gracious smile. I wouldn't dream of forcing your hand. All I desire is for my son to have the chance to pursue his own dreams. He then leans in, revealing a surprising secret. Instead of our famed ancestor, Vermouth, Iode actually reveres the Wise Sienna. At this, Lorian's stern expression softens into a fond smile. I can understand that, he admits, even in the old tales, I always found myself partial to Sienna. Whenever the party faced peril, she would conjure some brilliant new spell to save them all. Gilead lets out a warm chuckle, confessing, I've read those stories many times myself. But then, he adds another intriguing layer. My own favorite character in the legend was neither Sienna nor Vermouth. Lorian leans forward, his curiosity piqued. Then who did you admire most? Gilead's smile turns nostalgic, a distant look in his eyes. My favorite. His story was cut far too short. Suddenly, Gilead's eyes widen as he stares intently at one of the magical orbs. What is it? Lorian asks, concerned. Gilead simply points, expression a mask of pure disbelief. Look at that. He's pointing directly at Eugene's monitor where the boy stands perfectly still, sword and shield held ready. He's facing down a monster far larger and more terrifying than anything the other children have encountered. It's a hulking, muscle-bound ogre. The beast lets out a deafening roar, its eyes blazing with crimson fury as it swings a massive fist, crackling with its own malevolent magical aura. Eugene doesn't so much as flinch. He plants his feet, bracing himself to meet the monstrous punch, head-on with nothing but his small, round shield. The impact is catastrophic, cracking the very stone floor beneath him, yet the ogre's fist is